She's a native of Rongelap Atoll, the largest inhabited atoll in the Marshalls that was destroyed in the US testing of nuclear weapons. She was 1 year old in 1953 when the Bravo test was dropped. That test alone was equivalent to 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. But before she takes the podium, we've got a brief ABC news piece that was done a few years ago that provides excellent background on the Marshalls, and then Neisen will get up and speak.
Like a string of pearls, the Marshall Islands stretch across 500,000 square miles of the world's deepest water. A heavenly necklace of coral atolls. Except there is little harmony in this paradise. More than 4 decades of American rule have left the 43,000 Marshallese in discord. Poverty and illness are companions in the street. Most of the young are jobless. Many of the old have only bitter memories. Michua Anjan.
I don't like the American people or the American government. They have destroyed our culture.
For hundreds of years, the Marshallese were among the best fishermen and navigators in the Pacific. There was tuna from the water, copra from the land, but a tidal wave was coming from the modern world. In February 1944, Americans arrived here in force, beating back the Japanese who had claimed the Marshalls as a strategic base. By the summer of 1944, the last of the Japanese had been driven from their bunkers, including this one on the island of Roy Namur. The Marshallese had been liberated, but they were not going to be left alone. Under a UN agreement, the U.S. took charge of the islands as a trust territory and a key military outpost. Between 1946 and 1958, islands the Marshallese called home, the U.S. government would call ground zero.
3, 2, 1, fire!
"66 atomic bombs were detonated on the evacuated islands of Eniwetok and Bikini. The Cold War was hot, and America didn't need to seek approval from anyone, least of all the Marshallese. It was history's most massive atmospheric testing program, and one of the U.S. military's most remarkable public relations campaigns.
Well, now then, James, will you tell them that the United States government now wants to turn this great destructive force into something good for mankind? Something good for mankind. All right, is that all?
Okay, got it.
Convinced or coerced, hundreds of Marshallese were removed from their home islands, but not from harm's way. On March 1st, 1954, the world's largest hydrogen bomb cracked the sky above Bikini with a force twice as great as scientists had expected, showering the islands with radioactive fallout. Children played in it as if it were snow.
Since the time of the bomb, things have never been right with the children. I had my thyroid taken out. My son died of leukemia. He was 1 year old at the time of the bomb.
Michua and her husband John, like countless other islanders, were never warned about the bomb. At the time, John was mayor of Rongelap Atoll and among a small group of Marshallese who were later brought to the U.S. for radiation testing and a lesson in arrogance.
These are fishing people, savages by our standards. The Marshallese caught by fallout got 175 roentgens of radiation. Most humans are exposed to less than 20 roentgens in a lifetime. John, as we said, is a savage, but a happy, amenable savage.
For John Anjan, these black and white memories have drained much of the color from his life.
There were many more problems after the bomb. The women are giving birth to children that are not like human beings. Those that survive have trouble growing and mental retardation as well.
I lived with people who are what World War III would look like if World War III were to break out.
Glenn Alcalay was a Peace Corps worker here. He's just begun an island-by-island survey of the radiation's after effects.
We're still counting bodies out there. We still don't have any adequate picture of how extensive the damage is. We don't know how many thousands of people were caught in this fallout.
Recent medical studies confirm long-term effects are still appearing. In a 1986 study, 91% of the Marshallese tested had radiation-induced blood disorders, and the same report found double the normal rate of stillbirths and miscarriages.
I have 7 miscarriages.
Lejeanne Eknalane's 8th birthday fell on the day the bomb was dropped. 7 miscarriages later, she has not forgiven the United States.
I knew that if it wasn't what the United States have done for me and my family, my kids should be growing up like the others.
Was Bikini a mistake? Was Rongelap a mistake?
Oh, inevitably they were, but certainly not intentional mistakes.
Colonel Philip Harris commanded the U.S. military base on Kwajalein Atoll. He says Marshallese fears about long-term contamination are unwarranted. Just from the standpoint of safety, would you go back to Bikini and live?
I've been on Bikini. There is absolutely no background radiation, 0. There's less background radiation on Bikini than there is in the capital of the United States. The only difficulty is the cesium.
That's cesium-137. It's contaminated island plants and topsoil. In 1985, the danger from lingering radiation prompted the environmental group Greenpeace to evacuate hundreds of Marshallese from Rongelap Atoll, but only after the U.S. government refused to relocate them. Nuclear nomads, the people of Rongelap, now live on an atoll more than 100 miles from their home. Rongelap Senator Jetan Anjine.
Our land is our sacred position. That's all we have. And today our land has been destroyed. We cannot use it anymore. We cannot go there and live in peace because of the contamination.
Are you troubled at all by the American nuclear legacy here in the Marshall Islands?
No. I personally don't feel bad. In fact, I'm very proud that we, as many other nations, didn't just pick up and walk away and say, sorry about that, that's your problem.
Of course, that's precisely what the Marshallese claim has happened. Negotiating with the U.S. for their independence in 1986, the Marshallese agreed to a one-time payment of $150 million to cover all damages caused by the years of atomic testing. Marshall Island President Amata Kabua says it was the price for freedom.
We lost many things in that compact. We regret them, but what can you do? I mean, when you grow up with your brothers and he's a lot bigger than you and he slaps you, what do?
That's not apathy, it's reality. That American big brother has stolen much of the soul and self-sufficiency of the Marshallese.
Our entire educational system, health system, transportation system, everything depends on 90% of it depends on the United States grants.
Tony DeBroom is a Marshall Islands senator.
The sun is practically set on Marshallese culture.
Eclipsed might be a better description. Consider Kwajalein Atoll, leased to the U.S. for the next 26 years. The Marshallese who once lived here have been moved to make way for the American military base. The lagoon where islanders once caught fish now catches incoming test missiles from California, 4,200 miles away. Part transplanted suburb, part country club, it's home to some 3,000 Americans, but off limits to the Marshallese. They're allowed to work here, but not to live.
On the right here we have the brand new youth center, just completed construction. On the one side it has a big dance floor, and on the other side games and so on and so forth.
From Kwajalein's manicured lawns and baseball parks, it's just 15 minutes across the lagoon to Ebi, home to many of the radiation exiles. Nearly 10,000 Marshallese jammed onto 78 acres of hot, treeless coral. Called the slum of the Pacific, it's among the most crowded places on Earth. How many families are in some of these homes?
Oh, we're talking one room would be maybe 10 by 10, and you have 3 families.
Julian Ricklin is a local government worker. There are children everywhere here.
Children everywhere. That's Ibai.
And you see children on garbage dumps. Why are they playing on the garbage
They're
dump?
using this as a playground because there's no playground on Ibai.
Stalking the children and adults here is a cluster of diseases from both the first and third worlds.
Neisen Laukon is a pastor with her husband of 41 years at the First Micronesian Assembly of God Church in Reeds, Missouri. This year, Ms. Laukon has begun to speak publicly around the United States about how the continual nuclear bombardment from 1946 to 58 has affected her health, the health of her people, and of her homeland.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to compose myself. My name is Neisen Laukon, and I'm from Rongelap Atoll. I was only 4 years old when the U.S. returned the Rongelap people back to the island. Because I was young at the time, I didn't understand a lot of things. But I remember they told us not to eat any local foods, as well as food from the ocean. The AEC doctors, they came to the islands every year in January and brought seafood, sea rations with them for us to eat. But when we ran out of food, we had no choice. We had to get food from the ocean or the land. I remember eating some of the food that they told us not to eat. I had blister in my mouth. I remember people getting sick, vomiting, diarrhea, flu-like sickness. We got blisters on our feet from walking on the sand. We didn't understand what was going on. Nobody explained it to us. But we knew that it was because of the bomb and the radiation that fell on the islands. On March 1st, 1954, as you know, an hydrogen bomb called Bravo was dropped over Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands, causing radiation fall out across all the islands, especially Bikini and Eniwetok and the inhabited atolls of Rongelap and Utrecht. Because I am from Rongelap, I will only speak to what happened there on Rongelap. My uncle John Anjine, who you saw in the picture, was the mayor of Rongelap at the time, and he talked about what happened there in 1954. And this is his statement, and I'm going to read it to you. On March 1st, he was awakened at 5 o'clock in the morning. He was getting ready to go fishing. He and another man, they were making coffee outside of their houses. They saw a bright light to the west of Rongelap. When the light reached Rongelap, there were many colors, beautiful colors. People came out to see yellow, red, green. No one knew what was going on or what was happening. Then there was a gust of wind that came from west. It was so strong that some people staggered, including my uncle, John Anjine. They saw smoke cloud. My uncle stood there and watched the cloud and heard a loud sound, louder than thunder. Women and children were so scared, they ran into the woods. Once the sound died out, everyone started doing their normal daily activities. Some of the men went fishing, like my uncle, and when he was walking along the beach and saw the sky, he said it looked like it was white, like smoke. He went ahead and got some fish, then went to get some coconuts. He went back to the beach and started eating. Then the powder started falling, began to fall. He looked at the trees and they turned white, as well as his entire body. Everything turned white. He didn't know that this was dangerous. The powder fell all day long and all night long. My cousin, Hiroshima, who you saw in the picture, was in a coconut tree when the powder fell. It started itching and he ran into the ocean. It got worse. Other children play in the white powder. Maybe they thought it must be snow or soap or something. They didn't know what it was. Later, people went to get water. It had turned yellowish color. Then they realized that the powder that fell all day long and all night long was harmful. But the people still ate and drank contaminated food and water. People were sick, very, very sick. On March 2nd, 2 men came to Rongelap to inspect the damage from the bomb. They told my uncle they were going to stay 20 minutes, but they didn't even stay 10 minutes. They left. They didn't even tell the people how dangerous the bomb was. They didn't even tell them not to eat the food and drink the water. They left without telling them anything. The next day, the people's hair started falling out. They had burned skin. They were sick with vomiting, diarrhea, headaches, aches all over their body. They let them fend for themselves. On the 3rd day, people came with a plane and ship. They told them to get on board, not to take anything with them. Anyone who's thinking about staying behind would die. But before they got on board, they stripped them naked. Man and woman, together, they sprayed them down. They gave the men T-shirts and underwear to wear. And they went to another island called Island 9 to pick up more people there. They did the same thing to them, stripped them naked, sprayed them down, boarded them onto the ship. Then they took them to Kwajalein and left them there for 3 months. They took the women to the Laukon side, bathed them 3 times a day to wash themselves with soap. And every time they would check them for radiation, they needed 2 interpreters to talk with them. These 2 men, interpreters, saw their sisters, their mothers, their daughters stripped naked right in front of them. They stayed there 3 months. Then they took them to another island of Metro called Edges. The people had to build their homes and were left to fend for themselves. They stayed there for 3 years. Then they had a meeting and decided to take them back to Rongelap. They built them some houses on Rongelap. My uncle asked them why they were taking them back if the island was still dangerous. They told him that it was contaminated, but it was not dangerous. But if anybody was thinking about remaining on Edges, then they have to fend for themselves. So the people had no choice. They had to go back to Rongelap, the contaminated atoll. I was with them on the trip back to Rongelap. Like I said, I was young, and I didn't understand many things. But I saw people die of cancers, babies born with deformed bodies. Some of them you could see their brain, their backbones. Some babies that were born didn't look like human beings. They looked like animals or other things. I asked one of my cousins, why didn't you take pictures of the babies that were born deformed? She said, I was ashamed. I was hurt. And I didn't want people to see them. I didn't want them to know what happened. I left Rongelap and went to high school. I was 14 years old. One day the doctors came to the school and gathered all the people from Rongelap to take them to hospital to examine them. It was shameful for me because people made fun of us. They say, there goes the poison people. They didn't want to associate with us or come near us. There was a boy who wanted to date me, but I was contaminated. He didn't want anything to do with me. But it's okay, he was a born loser. I'm glad I married my husband for 41 years, 7 kids, 13 grandkids. I consider myself very blessed. So I grew up ashamed and hurt and thought all the people of Rongelap were some kind of livers. All things that I grew up hearing, my grandmothers and the elders, every time they talk about things, they started crying because of everything that happened to them. But no one told them or explaining anything to them. So it was like nothing had happened and no one cares. It took them a long time before they got any kind of help with health care. When the doctors came to the highland to check us once a year, they took samples, urine and blood, but never told us anything that was happening. People were sick with thyroid problems and cancer. My cousin Lucas Anjang, he was only a year old when the powder fell on the island. But as a teenager in 1965, they brought him here to the States so they could examine him. They brought my uncle here too and told him he was really, really sick. They said he had leukemia. His son never returned to Rongelap. He took him back to Rongelap in a box. My cousin Hiroshi Kebanli, who was on the tree when the powder fell, he died when he was a teenager. I was in the United States when the people was evacuated from the island in 1985 by Greenpeace in a boat called Rainbow Warrior. In 1975, my father went to Japan and asked for help. No one from the United States would help, so my father went on television and radio and asked for help. Scientists from Japan came and they said, remove these people because the island was 3 times worse than Hiroshima. About 5 years ago, I was sick. They said it was an infected lymph node all over my neck. I have nose, bleed. Doctors said they don't know what caused it and said it was really hard to get rid of it. I was sick for 3 years. And they gave me all kinds of antibiotics. Until now, I still don't understand. I still don't know. But I do know that I was on the island and consumed food and water that was contaminated. So I know I was affected by the bomb, too. All these things happen to us, and we don't know why. But we are trying to tell people what happened. It is not a shameful thing for me to talk about it anymore. But it is really sad thing for me to talk about what happened to our highlands. I left Rongelap when I was 11 years old in 1964, and I have never returned. I miss it very much. You might say, I am lucky to be alive today. But I say, I am here by the grace of God. He's still on his throne, and he's still in control. So I could curse America, but I'm going to say, God bless America. God bless you all. And thank you for listening to my story.